Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Good thing we don't have our iPhone 6s or an iPhone SE anymore.
Yeah, I know. We're definitely on the iPhone 10 train, so there's no looking back. But for people with older devices, there's been a bit of a battery stabilization fiasco. Now, I use that term loosely because a lot of people didn't even realize this was actually happening. So would you like to kind of dispel some myths about what Apple have done in the way of protecting batteries on older devices?
Yeah, so basically what happens is, there's obviously been the long-standing myth that Apple slows down older devices to get sales on their newer devices, which we've spoken about before and sort of rubbished that. However, there has been a statement by them about slowing down devices with depleted batteries, which is a slightly different but largely correlated thing to old phones. So basically what happens is when your battery capacity depletes and the processor draws power on the battery, the spikes can actually cause the battery to shut down completely and therefore cause a complete shutdown on the phone. Now, this has been going around Reddit, and I've read an article there by a battery expert who kind of says that the battery, once it reaches below 80%, then cathodes start dying, and that's what actually causes the whole issue. So there is a really scientific reason behind this. But basically they've come out with a statement. Do you want to give that to us?
Yeah, so what Apple said was, lithium-ion batteries become less capable of supplying peak current demands when in cold conditions, have a low battery charge, or as they age over time, which can result in the device unexpectedly shutting down to protect its electronic components. Last year, we released a feature for iPhone 6, 6S, and SE to smooth out the instantaneous peaks only when needed to prevent the device from unexpectedly shutting down during these conditions. And they also plan to add support for other products in the future. So this feature per se started with iOS 10.2.1, and they've just involved iPhone 7 when they rolled out iOS 11.2. So, I mean, I would rather have a slower device than one that shuts down or one that is dead.
Absolutely.
But I guess what this leads us to is the actual, two factors. There's misleading headlines about it, which, if you don't divulge all the information, then it definitely sparks a big sort of clickbait frenzy. And also there's the lack of transparency, which was sort of that bit of a shock for us. So we're big Apple fans, obviously. We're quite quick to defend Apple's decisions in certain areas. But I think for this, it's just a case of if they'd laid this out on the table to begin with, it wouldn't be this PR nightmare that it kind of is now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing here is obviously transparency, and I'll probably get a bit more into that just now, but one of the things I wanted to note first is one of our biggest praises and other people's biggest criticisms of Apple is the sort of walled garden or the closed ecosystem and closed source nature of their product. And we feel, I certainly feel that leads to great products that are really focused and deliver what I need. However, in this situation, it's sort of, there is a trade-off to be made. Slow down your device and have a device that's always on, or have a device that can randomly die when playing peak games or something like that. And then, that's kind of, and be faster generally. So if they had something like a toggle, which was defaulted on, or maybe, was pretty difficult to switch off, fair enough. But I think that them having made that decision, it kind of does add to the criticism of the closed ecosystem, even though it might not be easy to enable that feature.
Yeah, I was toggling with the idea of the of the toggle, just because they've rolled out this feature to protect your battery, to protect the device. So by even giving the option of the toggle, like I was real 50-50 with it. I was like, okay, yeah, it'd be good if people could just be like, no, I don't want mine to slow, but then they are essentially leaving their device open to damage.
Yeah.
I guess this is hard because prior to all this Reddit action, there was that sort of roll around of the conspiracy theory again of supposed like university studies of Apple purposely slowing down your phone to make you upgrade, and this is based on people's Google history after an update and all sort of stuff. And so people had kind of been misled and were talking about that. And then this rolls out with the headlines of Apple are purposely slowing down your phones. And even one of our, top listeners kind of shared an article to us, a Business Insider one, and just reading through that, the entire thing is just geared in a very negative, you can't trust Apple way, like so badly. Yeah. And it doesn't even touch on what's actually happening with the feature. So how do you think they could have done this initially? Like when they were planning to roll it out, should it have been something simply on the website? Something even a small side note with the keynote? Or do you think it's a case of they could have rolled it out and then basically handle it via like iOS prompts? So telling the user, hey, this is what's going on. Your battery's reached this state, and we recommend you do this.
Yep. So I think something a bit like, there are two kind of current prompts that I think they can use. So one is when an app has been using your location in the background frequently, and then they pop up and say like, hey, weather's been using your location in the background. Would you like to change that, or are you happy for them to continue doing that? And that sort of can happen like after a week of that happening, and they'll just prompt you. And so I could imagine a really good scenario where if your battery are depleted and they know that the battery smoothing feature has been used quite a bit by your device, they should then just say, look, over the past week we've had to smooth out your battery, consider getting it replaced. Here's like third party or Apple, like Apple themselves to do it, because that then makes it clear. It's not just, are we trying to hide it from you or not giving you a solution? Because I think if you make it obvious and you give a solution, then it's much better for the consumer. Then another one would be like, how like it has like a blue bar if it's an app is currently using your location, or when you jump out of a phone call, it's got the little green bar. They should have something like that to indicate currently your battery is messed up. So I think that would be pretty good.
Yeah, and so do you think, because this has come out after the fact and you got all these people up in arms about it, do you think that there would be any measure of them offering free batteries, or do you think that's just gonna make the whole thing worse?
No, I don't think they should offer free batteries. I think that other manufacturers surely have the same issues. I know that a lot of my friends with Samsung phones have complained that like after a year it's completely slowed down. I don't think this is an Apple only thing. I just think given their size and people's inherent distrust of them because they are the like biggest company in the world, I think that that's what leads to the spotlight being on them. But I don't think they need to replace batteries, because it's a battery issue that's not unique to them. It's
they've
industry
just
wide.
They basically like they did the right thing by implementing a feature to help the longevity of your device, but it's purely just the fact that no one knew about it until they were kind of seemingly forced to admit it, just because of all the hype online about this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So do you think, where does this leave you in the sense of like your trust level with Apple? Like, for me, it's a case of, man, I really wish that they just somehow announced it or had the prompts in there in the first place. But I can see the right that they were trying to do in it. And so, I mean, yeah, people can say, all right, you and I might be biased because we're just, such huge enthusiasts of Apple, but I think that there's just so much push for anyone to want to take Apple down, particularly over this last year. It's just been insane. Like, in terms of even just scrolling through online and the amount of like, oh man, Samsung have done this first. So like the whole Android lovers hate on Apple is at an all-time high, at least from what I've experienced. And so I feel like any little chance for anyone to shoot Apple down, like you had those small instances of iPhone 8 bulge, with the actual front the casing kind of like opening up at the side. It was a few instances of it around, I think it was in Japan or somewhere like that, and everyone like, through these big like Android enthusiasts were like sharing the article, being like, oh, this is terrible, Apple, haha, this is terrible. I'm like, have you not forgotten the Note 7? Like, this is a few instances of like a battery bulge thing. It's going to, in terms of the huge amount of units, not everyone is going to be perfect, right? And so they've rectified it. It was a little blip on the radar, and they're just wanting any little kind of negativity towards Apple to use in their arsenal,
Yeah. I think, look, good thing you mentioned the Note 7 fiasco. The longevity, or the surprising lack of longevity on that one, it just boggles my mind to this day that it's completely not even mentioned, not even factored in by anyone for anything. It's just ridiculous. And then Apple's had their fair share of controversy in the past, whether deserved or not. Taxes, working conditions in their factories. Having said that, those things only come up on a very small percentage basis every now and then by one Reddit lurker who decides to, bring up the facts that something happened ages ago. I think this is how this will go down. I think Apple will come out on the other side of it. For me, to go back a bit to your question, I think for my trust levels, what this makes me think is that I'll look very closely for their next issue, and hopefully, if they continue to not be transparent, that will be damaging for me. However, given that I think that this is the right thing for the right reason, just a lack of transparency, I'm willing to let this one go. However, on a much broader basis, they shouldn't continue that kind of behavior. Like, open Apple is definitely a better Apple.
100% agree there. I also kind of think that, if you think of something like as major as the Note 7, debacle, and the fact that that's died off a lot quicker than we expected, something like this is just is very minor, because overall it's actually a positive thing. It's something on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's something to protect your battery, to protect this sort of thing from happening. And so I hope that users will come to appreciate the feature. I just think some solution involving prompts with iOS and a way to direct you to have a battery replacement, whether it creates an appointment in the support app or something like that. That'd be cool. And I do, however, think that while there's been a string of bad news lately with a few things with Apple, I just think the sheer success of something like iPhone 10 and the other products they've released has kind of helped counteract that. It's not like they're not in a big downturn. They've just sort of had a lot of great, and then they've had some of this bad with it. So
yeah, I am. Judging by the Apple subreddit, certainly that positivity and the great products that have been released has been coming through. I've only seen like a couple of articles, one or two when it just hit on the battery thing, and then one by the battery expert defending Apple. And then since then, it's just been, I got this for Christmas, loving this feature, iPhone 10 this, Apple Watch Series 3. So yeah, certainly there is a lot of great stuff coming out at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess basically, in summary, we're appreciative of the feature. Wish they'd let people know in the first place, and I think that they will kind of learn from this in terms of how transparent they are involving this sort of preventative measures and that they roll out.
Yeah, and just my final closing thought is, again, I don't think they should give free batteries out, but maybe battery replacements at cost price indefinitely would be the correct measure. I don't think they need to make profit off a replacement battery.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so we're going to switch it up to a bit of a reflection on 2017. Of course, we're dropping this right in the middle of the holidays. I want to run through our favourite products, favourite event, what we found was the surprise of the year, our disappointment, and then any other favourites that we have. So, going to start it off. Favourite product for me, it's undoubtedly iPhone 10. There has been so many great products. It's very powerful ones too. Of course, I got the iPad Pro, and I'm really loving that. But ultimately for me, it's just been this huge wait for this redesigned iPhone 10. Absolutely loving it. What about yourself?
Yep, definitely iPhone 10 for me this year. The fact that I didn't get the iPad and ended up getting the iPhone 10 when I expected it to go the other way around just sort of shows how much the iPhone 10 really surprised me. And it's one of the devices that really wowed me this year. That when I picked it up, I knew I had to get one, and I've been loving it ever since. It's just so fluid and so much fun to use, and just sort of reinvigorates the iPhone lineup for me. I will have to give an honorable mention to the iMac Pro. I know we're not, it is a favorite product, but to me, the sheer power and engineering brilliance of it, it's really one of Apple's standout products this year. Just a pity I can't afford it.
Yeah, it is very tempting. It's very attractive, and the more kind of video reviews and that I see of it, I'm like, oh man, it's like, I know I don't need it, but that would be damn good. Okay, favorite event. Obviously there was the big hype about what was going to be the September event with the iPhone, but unfortunately for me, because of the leaks beforehand, I have to hand it to WWDC. That really held more surprises in it for me. And yeah, I don't know. It just pulled out all the stops. Like it was a very product heavy event for what is essentially usually a software event. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. WWDC was awesome. For me, the standout was just the new features on the iPad side of the software. That's probably also why I didn't feel that I needed to upgrade this year. Just it sort of renewed my iPad, and it's been great. I love drag and drop, and it's just been so awesome. And obviously HomePod, and knowing that Apple was definitely getting in the speaker space, certainly was just great.
Yeah, it certainly speaks volumes.
Oh,
yep.
Well, hopefully that's the last one for this year.
Yeah. But yeah, so just following on from that, as I said, the surprise for me was just the sheer amount of products at WWDC. That's my surprise of the year. And yeah, as you mentioned, HomePod, we spoke about this Siri speaker for so long, and given that things usually take longer to come out than we want, maybe. I mean, you're usually more realistic about the release of products. So for me, it was a bit of a win. I was like, it'd be great if they had Siri speaker. And then I remember a week before, it was all like, yep, it's happening. I was like, wow, this is going to be great. But unfortunately, that leads me to my disappointment of the year is the HomePod delay. What about yourself?
Yeah, certainly the biggest surprise for me was the iMac Pro. The specs on that, and just what Apple's put into it, and completely redesigning the inside and making something that is at least in the base model very competitive, and acknowledges, I think for me the thing that I love about the iMac Pro is it acknowledges that there are other professions other than video and photo editing, as I've complained about before. And then for my disappointment of the year, it has to be the communication of the battery smoothing. Again, the feature itself is debatable, and on my side, I'm okay with it, but just the communication around it really disappointed me.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with you on that one. But we're going to cap it off with our favourite either new app or a new service or feature. So I've got a handful here, but definitely for me is the swipe up style UI, the removal of the home button or the lack of dependency on the home button, say with iPad Pro, it's just it's so natural. Having iPad Pro helped me when I got the iPhone 10. It was, the learning curve was so short. I didn't even miss the home button after 5 minutes of use with the iPhone 10. And very, very rarely will I find myself trying to tap the area in which I feel like the button is. To the point that I actually had to use my wife's 6S yesterday, and I was swiping up. I completely forgot the button was there. And yeah, the fact that just with the multitasking with how that's handled with iPad Pro as well as iPhone 10, unfortunately there is that bit of difference between the two and the reposition of control center, so hopefully they can kind of level that out somehow in the future, but it's going pretty well at the moment. The heart health features with the watch, I think, are really good. I don't think, I'm a contender, hopefully, for this sort of stuff to come into play, but the fact it exists, the fact they're focusing on it, the fact they're advancing the watch even further, they're not resting on their laurels, they are ahead of the smartwatch game, and they continue to just hit home runs with it. Really love what they're doing with that. And on an app basis, I love the new App Store design. It made me want to go into the App Store and actually see what they're featuring, what's going on, what I can discover.
Yeah, certainly everything that you mentioned has been awesome, and I probably would have put that right up there for me. But one of my favorite things this year has been the Apple Music weekly playlists. So they added the new ones. I can't remember exactly when the first two were launched, my favorites and my new music, but then they added the My Chill playlist, and I think one other, but I've been really enjoying those and just, having fresh music every week. And look, I may not listen to it every single week, but if I'm going for a run, I can easily just tap one of those, and it's great. It's really been enjoyable. Drag and drop, as I mentioned earlier, has been absolutely fantastic and a real selling point when I show people who are interested in the iPad what it can do, and I'm dragging and dropping, and obviously everyone knows that I am an immigrant to Australia, and that requires an unbelievable amount of paperwork and administration, and iPad has just been absolutely fantastic with that from day one. But drag and drop with emails is just, because what I used to have to do was scan documents on my iPad, and then they would sync over iCloud to my MacBook, which I then used to email people. And now with drag and drop and new file system, it's just seamless on one device, and even scanning built into Notes. So that's been fantastic. And then cellular on Apple Watch, I mentioned earlier, just with the Apple Music weekly playlists, that coupled with being able to not have to download them to the watch and just run. Also, I had mentioned that I had an emergency where I would have really been able to use cellular on Apple Watch before. So just having that security and just generally having cellular is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, basically now we're just sitting hoping they just quickly roll out that podcast playback, and then that'll cap off 2017 very well.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we've covered a bit of negative press and our favourites of the year. If you'd like to let us know what you think about the whole battery smoothing thing, is it an issue for you? Has it affected your trust with Apple? And then on the flip side, what were your favourite things of this year? Definitely let us know by following us on social media. You can search Apple Slice Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as YouTube. And of course, just search in your player itself to subscribe to us. And of course, Nick, we are part of the Ozcast Network. Where is that?
You can find us on ozcastnetwork.com, AUSCAST network.com. And of course, you can find us on appleslice.com.au. And just in closing, I guess, for the year, I just wanted to really thank our listeners. We love hearing from our listeners. Ratings and reviews all just make all of this worthwhile. And it's been a really great year for Apple Slice. So it's been a lot of fun. We've had some cool guests on, and hopefully you can continue doing more of that next year. And it's just been really fun to do it, and it's been a really good year for us. And again, couldn't do it without our listeners. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and let's do it all again next year.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick. Last input for 2017, and I'll catch you in the new year.
Cheers.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.